This time on Real World Garage, we look at why my son's 300 inline 6 82 Ford F100 freshly rebuilt engine will not idle. Y'all come along. Hello, welcome back to the Real World Garage. We're out here today, not back on the Bug. We have not been able to get back on it like we wanted to. As with anything, life happens, especially in the Real World Garage. We were able to sort out the carpets out of the car, and I was able to pressure wash them, and that's some of the stuff laying there on the front of the car in the sun drying. But we've had a lot going on. I've been trying to help my son with his 1982 Ford pickup truck. And away it goes. Anyway, it has the good old 306 cylinder. This is his work truck, and did a ring and bearing job in it, and he recently had the head off and did some work on that. Put a valve in it, cleaned up some of the seats, and but this thing's running like it has a major vacuum leak, and we're trying to isolate that vacuum leak down. So I'm gonna set you up in the tripod, and we'll go over a couple of things and see if we can figure this thing out. All right, one of the other things I forgot to mention is we have also replaced, you've gone through the carburetor and made sure there's no trash in the carburetor. The EGR was not functioning properly, so we created a block-off plate for the EGR to eliminate the vacuum there. He has replaced the intake and exhaust manifold gasket assembly, and we currently have almost everything blocked off. The only thing we don't have blocked off, and we did the other night but it didn't make a difference, and I'm going to try it again, is the PCV valve. We're going to block that hose off, and we're going to try to crank it. Let me move this stuff so we don't lose it. And I will crank it and give you an idea of what it is doing. Throttle hooked up. No, it is not. I do not know why we did not hook that back up, but let's see what that's gonna take. All right, well, we've got to find the bracket and get that hooked back up. All right, well, we found the throttle bracket, have it reinstalled, and we have the, sorry for the wind, it's a little breezy here today. Hot, so I enjoy the breeze. Anyway, we have the PCV clamped off. We're going to see if now it will crank, now that I actually have throttle control, and we'll show you what it's doing or not doing, like idling. All right, well, you can see it doesn't want to run. We've checked the throttle shaft. We know the throttle shaft has too much play in it. We've made a little bushing and a piece to go over it to kind of seal it. I don't think that the throttle shaft leakage is quite enough to cause what we've got going on here. I think we've got another problem. I'm going to move back and look at the carburetor base gasket and see what that is doing. I want to see that it sits squarely on there. So we're going to get into that. Carburetor's been on and off here about 10 times probably, so tinkering with it. This one has been a conundrum, and it's probably just something so simple, and it's just bone puzzling us. Sometimes it's just the simple stuff that always gets you. All right, let's get it. It seems to be sitting fairly square, but I'm going to take it off. I want to look at the print that it's putting on the gasket and see that it's even all the way around. Well, ish. Doesn't look like it's putting a lot of imprint on the gasket. Let's get over here. I really like to see it squeeze the gasket a lot tighter than that. This is a new gasket. You can see. It's not squeezing it real tight, but it looks even. So it's got these like plastic limiters for like to prevent it from over crushing the gasket and deforming it, causing a leak. I just don't feel like we're getting enough squeeze on it. I'm considering leaving them out, and I think that might cause my gasket to deform. I may just go make a gasket for this thing. So let me think on it a minute, and I'll figure out what I'm gonna do. All right, well, I went inside and looked at the gasket kit, and I found a couple of plain, regular base gaskets that don't have the little crush washers in them, and I'm gonna stack them so that I can get a good, nice tight squeeze, and maybe that they will take up any imperfections that may be in there. I don't feel any rocking in the base. It feels like it sits down flat. So we're gonna try it. It doesn't cost anything. Using what we've already got. So we'll sit those on there. And it feels solid. So we're gonna eliminate that. Get them bolted back down here. And I have one more vacuum source that I need to eliminate just for good measure. And that's the transmission modulator valve. He replaced that recently, but we're going to eliminate it just for good measure, just to make sure that there's not something else going on there. So I'm actually going to try this base gasket first, and then we're going to move to the eliminating the modulator, because you really need to eliminate one thing at a time. Because the vacuum booster, brake booster is disconnected. All the other emissions vacuum lines, everything is isolated. So that we can try to isolate this. I just don't believe, in my heart of hearts, I just don't believe that the vacuum leak's coming from the intake or anywhere else. So, but we're gonna have to try to, like I said, try to eliminate it one thing at a time. There it is, right in plain sight. It's gonna be something simple. We'll find it, and we'll be like beating our head against the wall. It's like 4306 over. It doesn't get much simpler than this. Some of the simplest stuff made, kicking our butts. Back up. not fixed. So see if we can disconnect the throttle, the modulator valve. That should work. I'm gonna check fuel ratio, fuel needle, see where it's set. 1, 2. That's a good starting point. All right. Let's try that just for good measure. And nope. More head scratching. What have we here? I can't tell exactly where it's going wrong, but it looks like spraying at this post right here, this hose, which is tight. That's what makes the difference. I wonder if it's going down the base. Oh, shoot. Glad that didn't spit fire. That would have got my arm good. I think I have isolated it to where there's a vacuum port that presses into the aluminum base, and somehow it appears that it's leaking around that. So let's see what we can figure out. All right, well, I have found the issue. This is where anybody could have made this mistake, but experience does pay. And I can say that my son will have learned from this experience. I have actually learned something from this experience. You see that right there? I'll show you what that is. Okay, I can show you with this. This is the new base gasket. And you remember those little plastic inserts I talked about earlier? And how they have come out? Okay, they're to keep from over squishing the gasket. That's what they're for. Okay. Well, at one point, my son thought he was going to eliminate the spacer plate and EGR plate that goes between the carburetor and the manifold. Well, I told him right here, you can see there's an open exhaust port that unless you take and tap and recess a pipe plug down in that hole, you're gonna have exhaust pouring out under the hood, and it's not gonna work. So I told him he had to put it back on. So he pulled the carburetor back off, he pulled the gaskets back off, and when he did, that gasket looked like that. He didn't know where that little plastic piece went. Well, that plastic piece was still laying right there. And it is black, and you can't see it very well, and he was in a hurry to get it back running, so he took and just threw this gasket back in place. Well, what do you think that's gonna do? That is going to leave you a massive vacuum leak. So we are going to get everything cleaned up. I'm gonna have to try to rescue that gasket that I just sat down on there. It is a little bit of too much wear for my liking. I'd like to replace it, but I think I can make a helper gasket to go over it. I have some really soft gasket material, and I can make another gasket to go underneath it, and that will help seal it, and put a little gasket dressing on top, and then mount everything back together and tighten it down and see if it will run. I think it will. I think we have finally located our problem, because when I was spraying the brake clean, get this in shot right there, around this, it was dropping down, and it was getting sucked in right there and allowing it to run properly. So let's get it all put back together and see if I'm right. All right, we're gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna try to crank it without touching the gas, and we're gonna see if it'll fire up. I think we have it. Running like a Cadillac. Finally. Cadillac. Like nothing. This is gone. Thank God. I know me one excited, happy young man when he comes home. What's it sound like, Ben?
Better.
Like a Cadillac.
Yeah, runs smooth. Oh, it sits there and it doesn't shake at all.
All right, no gas, not touching nothing. You look at the key, it cranks. I'd also like to say this is the first engine my son has ever built to this extent. It was done in our driveway. It was done in frame. that was the piston that came out of it. And they did a basic hone, and he replaced 2 pistons that were quite damaged. I was pretty proud of the way this job turned out, seeing as how it was his first time. I had very little to do with this engine rebuild other than giving him some advice. So he did a really good job, and it worked out really well. He only paid $400 for this truck, so it is just an old work truck, and he was learning how to rebuild an engine. All right, I'd like to thank all my subscribers. Appreciate everybody watching. If you haven't subscribed, go down there and hit the subscribe button. We've got a lot more videos on the channel. There's one coming on the screen that could help you right now.